order and start with a moment of silence for some reason or another. The residential school in Kamloops, BC, British Columbia, in memory of the thousands of children who were sent to residential schools for those who never returned, and in honor of the families whose lives were forever changed by the residential school system. So, council will permit a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Welcome, council, staff, those who can join us online for this virtual meeting of electronic meeting of Wednesday, June 9th at 7 p.m. Wednesday, June 9th. And we'll start with our council commitment, which is we are grateful for the many gifts which have been bestowed on Penetanguishene and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. We ask that all in attendance and those who could not be here assist us in promoting good government. May our decisions as members of council be enlightened, and may we all be strengthened in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. May we be granted the wisdom, knowledge, will, and understanding to preserve the good fortune of the town for the benefit of all and to make good laws and wise decisions. Thank you all for attending. And we will move on then to the approval of the agenda. And that the agenda of the regular council meeting of June 9th, 2021 be approved as presented. A mover and a seconder, please. Councilor LaRose, Councilor Mayotte, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to 6 proclamations, and we have a proclamation here for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, June 15th, 2021. Whereas the town of Penetanguishene seniors are valued, contributing members of society, imparting a wealth of experience and wisdom in our communities, they deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that they live safely and fully engaged within the community that cares about them. Whereas the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, in support of the United Nations International Plan of Action, proclaimed this day to recognize the significance of elder abuse as both a public health and human rights issue. And whereas 2021 marks the 16th anniversary of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, its recognition will foster a better understanding of abuse and neglect of older adults. And whereas elder abuse is not limited to race, gender, culture, or circumstance, and regardless of whether the abuse is physical, emotional, or financial, it has a significant impact on the lives of individuals and families. And whereas seniors are at risk of being abused, and social isolation and ageism are contributing risk factors in Ontario, and whereas the town of Penetanguishene recognizes the importance of taking action to create social change that prevents elder abuse and raises awareness through education of neighbors, friends, and family members about the rights of older adults, and whereas preventing abuse of older adults will help improve their quality of life and then allow them to live independently and contribute to the vibrancy of Ontario for as long as possible. And whereas there is respect, there can be no abuse. Therefore, residents of Ontario are urged to stop abuse and restore respect. Whereas where there is respect, there can be no abuse. Therefore, residents of the town of Penetanguishene are urged to join this global movement to stop abuse and restore respect. Therefore, I, Doug Leroux, Mayor of the town of Penetanguishene, Ontario, dear Ontario, do hereby proclaim June 15, 2021 as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day and encourages all of our residents to recognize and celebrate seniors and their ongoing contributions to the success and vitality of the province of Ontario. Thank you. Moving on now to 8, which is, or 7 actually, the declaration of pecuniary interest. If anyone so has, may declare it now or at the appropriate time. We are now moving into a public meeting. And I have all my notes from Andrea. There are 2 public meetings tonight under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider 2 applications for zoning bylaw amendments to the town zoning bylaw 2000-2. The first is the removal of the holding symbol for the property at 33 Polish Avenue. The second is a zoning bylaw amendment for 39 Yonge Street. To Council, the purpose of this public meeting is to provide an opportunity for the public to make comments. The purpose of this public meeting is not to engage in a debate regarding the merits of the application, nor it is intended to be a question and answer session. There is an opportunity later in the meeting to ask questions on the applications after the public meeting has concluded. To the public, this is your opportunity to speak, and we encourage you to do so. In accordance with the Planning Act, if a person does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed or on approval given, you will not be entitled to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal, and you may not be added as a party to a hearing on an appeal to the LPAT unless, in the opinion of the LPAT, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So at 33 Polish Avenue, I would ask our planner to introduce the application.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council and the public. As noted, this is for the property at 33 Polish Avenue. It is the removal of the holding H symbol that is imposed on the property as a result of confirmation that the septic or a new septic is adequate and appropriate for the property. I can confirm that notice was given on May 18th to properties surrounding this one. We have not received any comments from neighbors, and the chief building official has confirmed that the septic system is appropriate and working. So the removal of the holding symbol is somewhat unique. It's not a rezoning application, it's a technical type of application, and the applicant has satisfied the conditions required to remove the holding symbol, and such is the purpose of tonight's public meeting. We have not received any comments, as I may have noted, and we are recommending that the holding symbol be removed. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I do not believe that the owner is on the call as well.
Okay, members of council, do any one of you have questions to Andrea? There being none, then we will move on to close the public meeting portion and read the motion and allow for council questions. Andrea, do we do this one separate to the other? Yeah. So then the motion is the zoning bylaw amendment, removal of the holding H symbol for 33 Polish Avenue. The recommended action that a zoning bylaw amendment to remove the holding H symbol for the property municipally known as 33 Polish Avenue be adopted. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Levy and Councillor Buddemacher, all in favor? Okay, that is carried. So then we will move on to the second one, and that is for 39 Yonge Street, and I believe we have the planner with us. So Owen Taylor is to introduce the application. Owen, if you are with us.
Thank you. So as noted, is an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for rezoning of the property known as 39 Yonge Street. Notice of a complete application and public meeting was provided to the required agencies and adjacent landowners within 120 meters of the property. A notice sign was posted on the property in compliance with the town's notice sign policy. To date, no correspondence has been received. The zoning bylaw amendment is being proposed as to meet condition number 5 of the provisional consent granted by the Committee of Adjustment originally on March 22nd, 2021. The condition was that the severed lands containing an existing single detached dwelling be rezoned to a residential zone. It was originally in the deferred development zone. The proposed residential zone is the residential first density special zone, which is consistent with surrounding lands. The retained lands would remain in the deferred development zone as to permit for future development. I would invite the applicant, Brian McKell, to speak on the application if he has any additional comments.
Your worship, members of council, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Thank you very much. I don't think I can add much more than what your planner has said. The application is a result of a Committee of Adjustment severance. The zoning to first density residential conforms and is consistent with the zoning of other residential homes in the area. The application, I think, meets all the provincial policy statements, Simcoe County zoning official plan, your official plan, and zoning bylaws. So I think it's fairly straightforward, and I don't think there's much more that need to be said at this time. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I would ask if there is anyone in the audience who wishes to make comments in opposition or in support of this application. And there being none, then I would thank everyone for their attendance and participation, and we'll close the meeting with a portion and read the motion and allow council questions and discussion. So the motion is recommended action that this report be received for discussion and that staff be directed to prepare a report for a future committee of the whole meeting to address any comments received at the public meeting. So members of council, do we have any questions through to the planner or to Councillor LaRose?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure if it's for Andrea or Brian, but is that the normal lot size in that area, 50 by 50? I just wondered, it just looked a little shallow from what it looks like down there, and I was just wondering if that's consistent with the neighborhood.
If I can answer that, Councillor, the lot is smaller than other lots in the area, but it exceeds the minimum lot requirements for your zoning bylaw. Again, due to the placement, the situation, the placement of the house on the property, we had to create boundary lines around it. That's sort of the best we could do. It is quite a large lot. It's about 10,000 square feet, which is, but that means there's a lot of property to the east and not so much to behind it.
Okay, Councillor Rose. Okay, any other further questions to the planner or to Brian or Andrea? Okay, there being none, I believe that I have read the motion that this report be received for discussion and that staff be directed to prepare a report for a future committee of the whole meeting to address any comments received at the public meeting. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Levy and Councillor Bodyboncoeur, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So moving on to number 9, deputations presentations. And first off, I have the pleasure of doing the Senior of the Year Award presentation, which I actually had the pleasure of doing earlier this afternoon. And I think, Sarah, did you have something that you are going to put up in regards to our senior? Okay, and there it is. And so with that, members of council, staff, and public, It is my pleasure to say that Antoinette Juneau, affectionately known by her family, friends, and community as Tony, is a dedicated volunteer in the town of Penetanguishene who gives selflessly of herself to numerous organizations and causes. Tony is a true Penetanguishene girl who contributes to her community whenever and however she can. If Tony isn't found helping out at a community endeavor, she may be found bowling in a seniors league or helping a friend. She can always be counted on to lend a hand to anyone in need. When required, Tony has led the campaign for a number of fundraising efforts for individuals, families, or local charities. Tony is a longtime member of the Penetanguishene Lions Club, the Penetanguishene Legion, a leader with Veteran Knits, and a volunteer at the Penetanguishene Centennial Museum and Archives. She has recently joined the Penetanguishene Museum and Heritage Advisory Committee, where her history of the town and its residents will be of great value. Tony has given her time to help during Winterama and other town events. She even starred in a recent video sharing her family's chicken and sliders recipe, which garnered lots of social media and attention for the museum in Winterama. Tony is game for almost anything when asked, as she cares deeply for all her causes and her dedication is limitless. Tony will go out of her way to teach anyone who wants to learn how to knit, crochet, or sew. She is ready to learn any new craft that she can, then make it into a project for charity. Her talents are endless. Tony has a big heart, an infectious smile, and a kind word for everyone. She has a gift. What do you mean, can't hear me? Members of council, are you able to hear me at all? Thumbs up. Okay. Tony has a big heart, an infectious smile, and a kind word for everyone. She has a gift for the gab and takes a genuine interest in others as she makes a new friends wherever she goes. The town of Penetanguishene is very honored to recognize Tony Juneau as the 2021 Penetanguishene Senior of the Year, as she is so deserving of this award. Thank you, Tony, for all you do. Okay, so with that was very, Mr. CAO, I see you have a hand up, or is that a thumbs up? Oh, that's a thumbs up. Yeah, that was a very pleasant task. Moving on to North Simcoe Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan presentation by Carrie Warner, Able Consulting. That the North Simcoe Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan be adopted as presented. Now, Stacy, our clerk, did inform me earlier that she may be running late. Is she with us?
She's here and on screen. You can see her there. So she made it in time.
Right. Okay, so then, and that the clerk be directed to submit the plan of Ministry of the Solicitor General by the due date of July 1, 2021. So Carrie Warner, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you to Council for having me here tonight. I'm sure that my presentation will, by the power of magic and technology, pop up on the screen shortly. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the first slide. So tonight we'll take a few minutes to discuss why we're doing this planning and who the partners are involved in this planning, as well as the process to date and the proposed process moving forward, as well as the 8 areas of risk identified across the county, and then those for your local plan, and then what the next steps are. Next slide, please. So why we're doing this planning? So it's really twofold. There's one, the mandate. So under Bill 175, municipal councils are required to prepare, adopt, and post a plan on or before July 1st, 2021. And then there's why this planning makes sense. And so quite often we find police responding to calls that are complex but not criminal in nature. with no chargeable offenses. And just because our police partners are available 24/7 doesn't mean that they're necessarily the most appropriate partner to be responding. So if done well, community safety and well-being will unite partners on intersectoral strategies that address social development priorities. So if you look at your screen, you see the bullseye, you'll see the outer ring is green. And that's really where we want to focus our attention. The thought is if we do a good job in that area, then we're going to minimize the other rings, and that's what we want. So we're looking at focusing on root cause from an upstream approach. Next slide, please. So this slide really highlights the fact that diversity, equity, inclusion, and including those with lived experience really underpins how we will approach the planning and the implementation of the strategies. Next slide, please. So this slide is, I'm not sure if it's cut off on your screen, it's a little cut off on my screen, but really if you look at it, the lighter gray is the proposed membership of each of the groups, and the darker gray is their roles and responsibilities. So if we move left to right across the page, the GMCC has been intact since the beginning of this process and has been very active in the plan development. And they're really responsible for the oversight and the governance of the local plan, of your plan. And then in phase 2, the local table will form, and you can see the proposed membership there. And really, that's the table that's going to lead the implementation of the plan, the implementation activities. And then the steering committee also forming in phase 2. Again, phase 2 is after July 1st. And the role of the steering committee is really strategic oversight around process. I want to be clear that it's not, it doesn't have governance over your local plan. It's really just looking at where some commonalities exist and where we can work together on some strategies and some of the administrative pieces. And then you have your advisory body, and those are your subject matter experts, and they've been involved in the planning since we started, especially in the 8 areas of risk, and they will continue to be involved as we move forward into phase 2. And then I'm not sure if you can see it, but on the end of the slide, there is any local tables or other groups that are planning around these same mandates. We want to make sure we align with them. Next slide, please. So what is the role of the municipality? In phase 1, it was to prepare, adopt, and post, should you choose to do so, your plan. And then phase 2, 1 through 5, that's really speaking to working as equal partners with some of those community partners that I mentioned, whether it be police or social, health, community service partners, to support the implementation efforts of the strategies identified in your plan. Next slide, please. We can move to the next slide.
It just might be a delay with Sarah.
Well, I know what the next slide is, so I'm going to start talking about it so that I don't lose any time on this presentation. So in phase 1, how we approach the planning, there we go. How we approach the planning is that we really took an evidence-based or data-informed approach to identifying our areas of risk. And there's a really great write-up in your plan about that very involved process. And we had great support from our public health partners that worked through a prioritization matrix, and the details are in the plan. There we wanted to validate our findings to see if we got it right. So we engaged in a very comprehensive stakeholder engagement over the course of many months, obviously virtual because of COVID. We also did multiple group presentations and sessions with feedback so that we could make sure that we were getting this right and that we weren't missing anything. And then we did an online community survey that ran between mid-February and mid-March of this year, identifying what the areas of risk were and seeking the residents' feedback on strategies to inform the plan. Next slide, please. So again, I'm just going to keep moving. So the 8 areas of risk that were identified across the county, you will soon see on your screen. And surprising or interesting, but probably not surprising, mental health and addictions was identified by all 5 planning groups. So just a reminder, North Simcoe is 1 planning group. There are 4 other planning groups that are tied into the county, and Barrie would be a 6th. And so all 5 plans will focus on mental health and addictions. The groups identified between 3 and 4 areas of risk for their local plans. Next slide, please. So your local plan will focus on 3 areas of risk: mental health, housing, and education. Next slide, please. So around mental health and addictions, we're really focusing on improving equity, access, and quality of mental health and addiction services for our residents across the continuum. And this is nicely going to align with the Roadmap to Wellness, which is the provincial mental health and addiction strategy that was released last year. A couple other things that kind of pop off the page there is looking at improving and increasing client and family engagement, increasing our capacity around harm reduction and trauma-informed approaches to care, building capacity for people to self-manage their own mental well-being, and then working with employers. And this is especially important for small businesses that might not have resources or supports to support them with workplace mental health, but this was definitely an area that we need to be focusing on and supporting our community and community partners with. And then last one is a measurement, a metric for each of the areas of risk. Next slide, please. The next slide is housing. And so we know that there's a 10-year affordable housing strategy in place, and we want to make sure that our work aligns with that to support that. But in addition to attainable and affordable housing and maybe potentially optimizing the planning tools at our disposal or at your disposal, we want to make sure that there's a focus on housing stabilization. So keeping people successfully housed. And we see that this is certainly an issue that's really coming to light right now. And it's putting people in a really, really precarious situation. So we definitely want to prioritize this and focus our efforts there. In addition to that, we want to make sure that we align with any local, provincial, and federal initiatives around homelessness and homelessness prevention, because we know that this is a growing concern as well. Next slide, please. The last thing in the plan is around education. So that's really making sure that there's a everyone in our community has a clear pathway for education, regardless of their age. Often when we think of education, we think of kids coming out of school and what they're going to pursue. But we know that people enter the workforce and need education at different points in their life. We will certainly have a focus on skilled trade and healthcare, because we know that those are two areas that are really, really critical. And we're seeing a crisis now and a looming even greater crisis in the future. So some of the things that we'll be looking at is aligning training and employment opportunities, breaking down the barriers to education, as well as looking at increasing our capacity in our community for people to upskill, pursue second career and apprentice in a skilled trade, and also improving the perceived value of apprenticeship, because I think what people think of when they think of apprenticeship is very different in 2021. Yes, there's some of those standard trades that we know of and we think of, but then we also know that there's a very big array of technologically enabled trades that people might not be thinking of. So greater awareness there. And then also increasing our outreach and engagement with those that are underrepresented in educational statistics. Next slide, please. So the next slide is a colorful visual, and it kind of shows like a bird's eye view of the planning process. So you can see at the top, North Simcoe there, and you see on the outer ring, at the outer edge there, the GMCC, which is that local plan governance, that stays in place. Then you have the bigger circle with the colored rings around it, and that's your local planning table that will form after July 1st, and those rings are reflective of your areas of risk. Then you have a darker gray circle that is connected by a ring, and that is your one representative that will sit at that county-wide steering committee. And then you can see the advisory body in the middle that will support all 5 plans. Next slide, please. I won't spend too long on the next slide. It's really just showing some of the amazing intersectoral work that's already taking place in these 8 areas of risk across the county, and just to recognize that this work is taking place, and we want to leverage what's going on, and we also want to have a say in what that looks like in our local communities. So we'll make sure that we align our strategies with those that are underway. Next slide, please. So how do we measure this work? You know, these are complex social issues. And the solution to them, the pathway is not linear. We know that they're interconnected. There's dependencies. There's enablers for one to improve an area in another. So we also know that municipalities, groups, and organizations cannot be held exclusively responsible for community level well-being. But what we do know is that stakeholders can work together across sectors and coordinated strategies to move the needle to the good, to improve in those social development areas. So the goal when these strategies are implemented is that they will have a positive contributory effect rather than a causal relationship with community level safety and well-being. Next slide, please. So your next steps would be, should you choose to do so, adopt and post your plan on or before July the 1st. And then after July the 1st, when we move into phase 2, form that local community safety and well-being table with your community partners. And then after that table forms, that table will identify someone from that table that will represent North Simcoe at that kind of county-wide steering committee. Next slide. And I believe that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, please. Okay. Carrie, very well done. Very good presentation. And I would ask any members of council if they have any questions through to Carrie. No. So Carrie, once again, thank you so much. And with that, we'll move on to the motion that the North Simcoe Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan be adopted as presented, and that the clerk be directed to submit the plan to the Ministry of the Solicitor General by the due date of July 1, 2021 as required. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Cloux and Councillor Saint-Amand, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So now we move on to 9C, and this is a presentation from Steve Langlois of Monteith Brown, the Arena and Recreation Studies. So Steve, if you will.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, and any residents of Penetanguishene joining in. I will just give me a moment here to share the screen. I do have a presentation. It's fairly detailed. I will try to race through it as quickly as we can so we can save any questions that you may have for the end. So in front of you today is the full draft of the Arena and Recreation Center study. It will be going out, I'll cover this in a bit more detail, but it will be going out for public consultation shortly and then back to council as a final document at some point thereafter. So a bit about the study. I'll start at the start. The Penetanguishene Memorial Community Center and Penetanguishene Curling Club are aging facilities and require investment. The study plans for their future and the evolving recreation needs of your community. Specifically, it looks at facility and program needs, investment options, including a locational assessment, and capital and operating costs. The study process itself has been very comprehensive. It looked, as I indicated, at needs, and that we took a deep dive into demographics, growth, community consultation into those needs, usage trends, other demand factors as well. And I'll cover this shortly in the presentation. We looked at a number of different options to take you forward. We are recommending one option, but if you want to sort of look at it as a menu of different choices that you have along the way, that will be one part of it as well. If you haven't seen the full report, it's about 100 pages. It is available on the Connect Penetanguishene website. And a final study, again, will be coming back in front of council as we enter phase 5. So as we plan ahead, the PMCC or the Arena was built in 1954. It's exceeded its lifespan and will require additional funding to maintain or replace. Any reinvestment would include the same functionality and level of service. It is not feasible to expand. So this is a question, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. None of your engineers have given it a best before dates, but we know it has certain limitations, and those structurally sound will become, is becoming more expensive to maintain over time, and those shortcomings are becoming more evident. Built in 1973, the PCC, the Curling Club, is in a strategic location that the council has noted in its strat plan as having higher and better use at some point in the future, being along the waterfront. So relocation is desired. As we look towards the future, we know that the town is committed to building healthy community and fostering active lifestyles. A new multi-use rec center is supported by your 2014 Community Recreation and Community Services Master Plan and the 2019 Community Strategic Plan. Community is supportive of a new facility with modern amenities, such as a full-size arena, an indoor walking track, program space, and gymnasium. Multi-use rec centers offer many benefits, such as increased year-round program opportunities for all ages, and a facility that is accessible, convenient, and efficient. So this information on this slide was in large part presented to council, I believe in October of last year. This is an overview of the facility needs assessment, the components that have been recommended to move forward, should a new facility be contemplated by council. This mix of amenities really became our jumping off point for the development of the concept plans and the costs. It was based on input from from stakeholders, from the public, and we looked at a number of different things in arriving at those recommendations as noted earlier. So at minimum, and I'll come back to this one in a moment, it would include one ice rink. That would be a single pad with up to 1,000 seats. And that would be a full-size NHL pad, 200 by 85, as opposed to 180 by 80 that you currently have. It would include an indoor walking track all season. It would include a multi-purpose suite of program spaces, including a gymnasium for active sports to even meetings, community events, and so on. It would have a large hall that's similar in size to the Brian Orser Hall, activity studio, and a boardroom. We've been anticipating that the Sports Hall of Fame would be a willing partner in this. Preliminary conversations suggest that they're interested in continuing those conversations. It would potentially include tenant space for post-shop concession, support space for town staff offices, sport group offices, storage and workrooms. All of those are noted deficiencies in the current arena. There simply is not enough space for all of those uses at present time. Ideally, it has some future expansion space as well, so you're not in the situation that you're in right now and are landlocked, and potentially could have outdoor amenities. Now, I mentioned single pad arena. Our needs assessment did not find sufficient demand for a second ice pad for hockey and figure skating, but we recognize there's a regional demand factor that needs to be considered in there as well. We've run a number of different scenarios, and without getting too fine into details, one of them does include sort of an oversized curling rink that could be used as a twin pad arena should demand shift from curling to ice hockey later on down the road. But the optional component that you'll see sort of is included in some options, but not others, is the participation of the curling club, a 5-sheet curling rink within this facility. And we've had conversations with that group, and we expect that more details would follow as this, if council chooses to continue forward with this work. So really, we looked at 3 options, 1 sub option, and there's a little bit more of some granularity to some of these, but in large part, there's really 3 to 4 distinct options. Number 1 is largely status quo, is retrofit, is put money into the facilities that you currently have. Option 2A and 2B are to develop a new facility, one with curling, one without curling, but it would replace the arena, the existing arena. And option 3B is sort of an in-between model where you're still developing that new multi-use rec center, but you're actually you're working to move curling out of their existing facility and into the PMCC. It's really a stopgap. I don't think it's one that our steering committee had a lot of interest in, but in the fullness of the work that we did, it is being presented as a hybrid approach. So this feasibility study, while an important step, represents one of the first concrete steps towards major investment in your recreation infrastructure. That means we need to sort of tee up a few things here. Any of the design concepts that are shown in the study are very preliminary and subject to change. They do, however, provide a basis for evaluating sites and further consultation, so they're effective in that way. Other decisions could, we know, impact facility components such as the availability of facilities in the region, sustainability of local clubs. If something were to happen to the North Simcoe Rec Center or elements thereof, that would be, I think, that would have an impact on demands and needs in the area. Completed by our architect partners, both the concept plans as well as the capital costs. The capital costs are Class D estimates, so they have a very high, their order of magnitude, and they have a very high level of contingency associated with them, really plus or minus 20%. The cost estimates will become more precise over time. We don't like to put out costs that are that we don't think are achievable. The market has been very robust lately in favor of builders. There's been a lot of infrastructure, and there's been a lot of and the demand for contractors is high right now. So that might be influencing the cost as well. All of the costs that I will show you are in current year dollars. So if this is built 10 years down the road, they will need to be escalated for inflation. And given her past experience, they are unlikely to decline. Again, noting that there is a sizable contingency associated with them. And lastly, the capital costs are full project costs. So this is not only construction, but also the soft costs, bringing on a project manager, the architectural and engineering works, all the site works that would be required, making certain assumptions. We often see lowball costs in newsprint and different media. Those are often just construction costs. This is the full, barring any unforeseen costs, the full cost item. So based on those four options I presented earlier, I'll take a moment and discuss option one because it's the most different from the other ones. This again is our status quo. This is investing in your two current facilities. It is based on the audit work that has been completed recently. It is, so it would be $7 million between those two facilities, the PCC and PMCC, to just deal with life cycle repair and replacement. It is like for like. It does not include any upgrades. It doesn't include improved seating, more change rooms, more parking, larger ice surface, adding dry land space. None of that would be included. It is keeping the lights on and keeping it active. And your operating costs are presented there in the middle column as really a baseline for what you can anticipate. The other three options that are presented here range really from 36.7 million all the way up to 49.1 million. Again, there's a lot of picking and choosing between these. Options 2B and 3 really don't include curling. 3 includes moving curling into PMCC, so I guess that's partially included. But that's why option 2B is the lowest. It's not having that second ice surface to address curling. There's a few, the range between on option 2A between the 44.6, 49.1 million has a lot to do with the number of seats, the number of levels, and sizing of the rink. So that's the variability that's moved, that's built into that. The study included a robust location assessment. So if a new facility is ultimately chosen, you will need a new site. There really are not that many available sites within your community. We started into this process before the town announced that it had purchased the former PSS building. The minimum size is 4 hectares to really fit a facility and parking associated with the needs assessment here. We looked at 12 sites initially, whittled that down to 4 because most of the other sites did not meet those minimum criteria. So we looked at PSS, Ojibwe Landing, a Morden construction site on Fuller Avenue sort of emerged through our process. And then there's undeveloped lands next to Jordan Village below PSS that were also looked at. Those are not in municipal ownership. Only A and B would be. So we set an extensive list of criteria. It was a scoring and matrix type system using 14 different scoring mechanisms. And the former PSS site scored the highest and is recommended. So you'll see that in the ranking column with 91 out of a possible 100 points associated with that. Not far behind was the land itself. However, those not being in municipal ownership would have lost points for that. So the recommendation that we're advancing to the public is to pursue the development of a new multi-use recreation center, one variation or another of option 2 at the former PSS site. In order to get you there, there's a few steps that need to be considered in the short term. One is to continue with plans to replace the PMC roof and other necessary life cycle projects. you have a reserve, you've been working towards that. These facilities, this is not happening overnight. You know, in most communities that we work in, these are 5 to 10 year type of projects. So getting your ducks in a row, you still need that facility operational. Secondly, developing a funding strategy, establishing a capital reserve so you can start contributing towards this. Establishing a building committee to really start making some of the more detailed decisions along the way, and also work towards fundraising and other aspects of that will help realize the facility. Continue to work with other potential partners. The curling club is definitely key and central to that. They, you know, ultimately the option that you choose, I think, may have a lot to do with their willingness and interest and needs moving forward. You may even solicit proposals from other prospective partners for large and small to participate in this project. And then ultimately closing the PMCC as a nice venue when the new recreation center opens. So, you know, this is, as they say, sort of ripping the Band-Aid off. This is not in addition to, this is in replace of, as you think beyond the rink and try to create a true community hub. There may be some potential reuse options for the PMCC. We would see those as short term, and a lot of that has to do with your timing and moving forward and state of that facility at that time. Just wanted to leave you quickly with a few images of what this could look like. So as you dive into the plan, there are some concept plans. This just gives you a feel for what a multi-use recreation center with, in this case, a single pad rink, a 5-sheet curling rink, gymnasium, all the dry land space, indoor track would look like on a 4-hectare site. Same thing here, just a few renderings. These are all documented and detailed in the report. Just some sample images. These are other builds that MJM Architects recently brought to completion. It just shows you sort of the change in how they're being designed nowadays. So these facilities, you'll notice, have fixed bucket seats, a lot of use of natural light, large well-lit lobbies and corridors for gathering, really make them a true community hub. Some of the dry land space, you really don't have a lot of these, you don't have some of these spaces in your community right now, not in your municipal inventory. A multi-use gymnasium, accommodate pickleball, basketball, volleyball, you name it. It doesn't have to be a sport, it can be various forms of community gatherings, conferences, fairs, and so on. The Winterama, certainly. Community hall, multi-purpose space, fitness for all ages, could be a dance studio. You get the idea. And I'll leave you just with a few key takeaways here. As we look ahead, we know it will take several years to realize the new facility. The study helps make you grant ready. We know it will take a village in terms of your funding strategy to achieve this. Additional consultation will be required with the community on location and facility design, as well as discussions with potential partners. I mentioned that previously relative to curling, Sports Hall of Fame. You'd be looking to establish a suitable agreement, for example. The study is really to get you started on your long-term financial planning. It will take a variety of different sources until the concept is more refined. Tax impacts are not yet known. I'm sure you could sort of derive a few examples based on that, but you know, I think it's we want to proceed with caution in that way. And ultimately, this is the start of the conversation. So council will make the decision to move forward based on community input and the responsible and sustainable use of tax dollars. Last slide, a virtual input session is scheduled later this month. We say date to TBD. I think that's now set for June 24th. That's a Thursday evening. That will be at 7 p.m. Attendees can pre-register for the session through the Connect Penetanguishene website. More details will be provided there. The full study will be on is already on the website. And then we look forward to bringing this back with what we heard from the community for consideration by council. So thank you for being a willing audience, and I'll be happy to respond to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Steve. Very precise. And I will ask if members of council have questions for Steve. Councillor Levy?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. Where is he?
Steve?
Steve. My question is, the facility itself, you said is would take 10 acres. Does that include parking?
Yes, yeah, that includes parking. It includes some opportunity for expansion potentially. It's a safe and comfortable number. It's not enough to include a soccer complex outdoor. It's probably not enough to include, a third ice pad or anything like that, but that would include parking.
And how large is the site?
The PSS site?
Yeah.
It's 5.5, so it's 5.5 hectares. We were looking for 4. So I'll speak in hectares, and if you like, I can try to convert that as we talk.
Well, hectares are fine.
Okay. Yeah, so it's there is room. We anticipate, I mean, the main use of the space is the parking lot.
Right. What I'm looking for, Steve, is how much potential land would there be for us to sell or develop for housing or partner?
I think I might be able to answer that. The property of Councillor Levy is approximately 13 acres.
Okay, 13 acres. So that leaves us potentially 3.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I've got lots of questions, but I will stop now and leave it to the rest of council. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, the next one I saw was Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Your Worship. Steve, question for you. Why did you pick 1,000-seat arena?
So the study runs 3 different options, 600, 800, and 1,000. I believe your current facility is about 1,000 seat capacity. Some of that would be standing room. Some of it is accessible. Direction that we received from our steering committee is that we at least want to use the current seating capacity as our upper limit moving forward, but we did offer a few different options based on what we're seeing, how other facilities might be designed nowadays.
Is the cost differential that much different than?
I would have to pull that up. In the grand scheme of things, no. But these are decisions that you would make in the fullness of time. Probably the biggest change is there's some benefit to actually going up and adding more seats because you can do more with the space underneath, corridors for change rooms and what have you. When you start adding the need for a second level, it's more structurally complex. So there is a cost differential, but it's I would say it's within $1 million to $2 million between the different seating options. So those are detailed in the report. I'll pull them up, and if you require more detail, I can come back to that.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions, members of council? Councillor Budbunker.
Thank you, Worship. Steve, I just want to compliment you on your report. At over 100 pages, I think it's one of the best reports of this nature that I've read in a long time, and I want to compliment you on the comprehensiveness of it. I think it's going to be a great resource document as we proceed through this journey of building a new facility for our community. And I would encourage anybody who hasn't read it to go through it. There's a lot of information there, but it's going to be a great baseline document from which to continue to work on this project. I note that in your presentation, you talked a little bit about the Sports Hall of Fame, which I was happy to hear. As the report progresses, when you start looking at the various options, and this may be more of a space issue than anything else, in particular in your charts, when you look at the different options, some of the descriptions get narrowed down to program rooms, and the Sports Hall of Fame is not mentioned specifically in any of the options as, there's the walking track, there's program room, spectator rink. And I just wanted to make sure that, and encourage you when you work on the next draft, is perhaps you can fit some words in there about the Sports Hall of Fame in the various options, because I know you started off with your presentation about how it's a key component, but as you move through the options and that chart on page 79, it's not mentioned. But congratulations. I think it's a great report. I look forward to the input from the public on this. I think it's going to be really interesting, and it's an exciting time, or we're going to be in for an exciting time in Penetanguishene. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Wedebacher, points well brought up, and I agree with you 100%. And actually, yes, members of council, if you haven't had the opportunity to review and go through the 100-page document, you might want to do so. Do we have any other questions to Steve from members of council? Not at this. Oh, Deputy Mayor, I see your card up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've not had an opportunity to read the 100 pages, but I wondered about the $7 million that you're listing as a potential cost to upgrade what we have. Is it listed what those upgrades would possibly be in the document, or is that something that's separate from the document?
Thank you for your question. It's summarized in our report. The source of that data is your building condition assessments that were completed by a third party within the last 2 to 3 years. So the numbers would be coming from there. We've escalated them slightly given just the time that's occurred since then. Some of the larger, it's the roof would be some of the larger ones, the rink slab itself, the rink boards. They're really just, I would say it's regular maintenance in the sense that these are typical costs that would come up in a 20-year lifespan of most facilities. It's just that, the older the facilities become, the more uncertain and less reliable those systems can become. And again, it is just repair and replacement. There's $0 associated with upgrades.
Thank you.
Steve, along those lines of the Deputy Mayor has brought up in that $7 million picture, would that, or can that include, like, for example, accessibility, which is very limited now if it could be done, and also does it bring, or would it bring this building to building code, which is certainly not going to happen?
The $7 million in investment are life cycle elements. They really have very little to do with accessibility. So that $7 million would not bring it up to code. I suspect you would be very limited in bringing it up to current code completely relative to AODA. And that is something that any major redevelopment of that facility would trigger the need for a fully barrier-free facility. And I don't think that's a conversation that's, I don't see that as being a feasible option. You really have to tear it down and start from scratch at that stage. It does have an elevator. It has a lot of great things associated with it, but you look at turning radius, corridors, door widths, level changes. There's so many things that go into barrier-free nowadays. It's why many municipalities try to stay away from major redevelopments rather than just either continuing to put money in as needed versus building new.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. As usual, report very well done. Any other members of council have questions to Steve at the moment? I'm sure if you don't, that there will be many opportunities later, particularly after we have our public input. So with that, Steve, I thank you once again for your presentation, and the members of council, we will carry on with our meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. Have a good evening.
Thank you. So that we will move on to adoption of minutes not already confirmed. That the following minutes of council meetings be confirmed and adopted as circulated. Special Council May 11, 21, Council May 12, 21, and Special Council May 26, 21. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Cummings and Councillor LaRose, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, that we have none. We move on to 12, which is matters for consideration. A verbal update from the Chief Administrative Officer re COVID-19 municipal impacts. And Mr. CAO, if you are there, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to just provide council as well as the community just a few little updates with respect to COVID as it pertains to our municipal services. As council and the public is aware, the province did lift the stay-at-home order most recently. That was issued on April 7th, and it did expire on June the 2nd. As a result, our emergency control group did have a conversation, and certainly we're anxious to open up our doors at Town Hall, the Public Works Admin, as well as the Fire Hall. Prior to that, we had been operating on an appointment-only basis, and so the doors did open, and we lifted that appointment-only requirement the very next day on Thursday, June the 3rd. With respect to penalties on tax as well as utility arrears, those will be reinstated specifically on the 2021 second installments for both utilities and taxes, and those are reinstated effective tomorrow, Thursday, June 10th. And we've certainly communicated that very well to the community. As council will recall, we did have about a week grace period, in accordance with giving the public an opportunity to adjust. There are some bylaws later on this evening just to formalize that process. We are also now requiring open air burning permits as well as dog tags to be purchased and by our community, and that was as of last Friday, June 4th. Bylaw coverage does continue on a 7-day-a-week rotation, 10 hours a day, and certainly bylaw is quite busy responding to a number of complaints, a lot of which are COVID oriented. But certainly bylaw continues to patrol on that 7-day-a-week rotation. With respect to our recreation and community services, our splash pad, particularly opportunistic with respect to the latest heat wave we've been receiving, did open up last Friday, June the 4th. Hours of operation are 10 o'clock a.m. to 7 p.m. At that facility. Beach use was permitted effective May 22nd, but we do note to the public that the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit's monitoring program, beach monitoring program, does not start until June 21st. Our wharf, our launch ramp, did open up a number of weeks ago, but particularly the wharf was reopened for recreational boating as of Saturday, May 22nd, which is in accordance with provincial regulation. And we will be looking to reopen our Tourist Information Center, or our TIC, in the very near future once we're able to properly staff it. And there is a report later on this evening as well that touches on that. Outdoor fitness classes as well as summer camps will be starting up in the near future in the coming months. Outdoor fitness classes as early as the 3rd week in June with some yoga and Zumba, as well as our summer camps in July, which council will recall that Boys and Girls Club of North Simcoe, we're on a trial with them to operate those summer camps. So we're rather excited about that opportunity as well. And certainly excited to provide that opportunity for our community and for the youth in our community. The vaccination clinic in Penetanguishene continues to operate quite successfully. Lots of positive feedback being received on that particular endeavor. And I would just add that the Canadian Red Cross, as well as Community Reach, are continuing to offer people rides that don't have access to transportation to the various vaccination sites or clinics. And as the council and the public are aware, we do rotate that clinic between the Midland North Simcoe Rec Center as well as our Penetanguishene Arena. Lastly, the province did announce earlier this week, I believe yesterday in fact, that we are moving to step 1 on their roadmap to reopen effective this Friday, June 11th. And that's a little bit ahead of time in terms of what they had originally intended at some point next week. Our emergency management control group does continue to meet on a biweekly basis, very close to, keeping our fingers very close to the pulse, and certainly communicating accordingly to the community. We're very cautiously optimistic that we're not going to, we're going to continue forging ahead with positive news, but certainly very aware and cognizant that we don't let our guard down. To ensure that we mitigate any risk of taking steps backwards, particularly with all the steps and progress that has been made to date. So with that, Your Worship, that was really my update, and I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO. Members of council, does anyone have any questions through to the CAO? No, I guess you did a great job, Jeff. No questions, so you're off the hook. So need a mover and a seconder that the verbal update from the Chief Administrative Officer re COVID-19 municipal impacts, that the verbal update from the Chief Administrative Officer be received for information. So a mover and a seconder. Councillor Mayat and Councillor Saitama, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. And we move on now to B, model home agreement. And the model home agreement is 176 and 200 Fox Street, Champlain Shores, formerly Bay Moorings, that council approved 4 model homes on blocks A, B, C, and E of the draft plan of subdivision for the subdivision known as Champlain Shores, formerly Bay Moorings, and that council pass a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a model home agreement with respect to blocks A, B, C, and E of the draft plan of subdivision for the subdivision known as Champlain Shores, formerly Bay Moorings. So with that, a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Mayat and Councillor Vadeboncoeur. And before I call a vote, does anyone have any questions through to our planner, or are we all good to go with the vote? Councillor Vadeboncoeur, you have your card up.
Thank you. Really not a question, just a comment. It's really nice to see this development proceeding. The level of detail in the documents is quite impressive. And having these model homes just might accelerate sales, and we'll see this development get built. So really, really nice to see this moving ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vadeboncoeur. I actually had some interest in that, and I've seen the floor plans for all the model homes that are being recommended. And from what I'm told, that all 12 of the waterfront homes are sold, and the big majority of the Waterview homes are already sold. So I guess they just want to get these model homes up so people can see what they're buying. So with that, I will call a vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We move on to presentation and consideration of report, Committee of the Whole report. That the recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report related to the Recreation and Community Services section be approved. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Cummings and Deputy Mayor. Any questions or concerns? There being none, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. that the recommendations contained within Committee of the Whole report related to the Planning and Development Services section be approved. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Levy and Councillor Vadeboncoeur. Questions or concerns? None. All in favor? That is carried. That the recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report related to the Transportation and Environmental Services section be approved. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Klug and Councillor LaRose. Any questions, concerns? All in favor? That is carried. And then the recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report related to the Finance and Corporate Services section be approved. Mover and a seconder is Councillor Saint-Amand and Councillor Mayotte. Questions or concerns? Being none, all in favor? And that is carried. We move on now to 14, which is presentations and consideration of reports, special committees. And a special committee of the whole, May 26-21, that the recommendations contained within the special committee of the whole report related to the planning and you're on the back side. Planning and Development Services section be approved. And so mover and a second, that would be Councillor Levy and Councillor Vadeboncoeur. All in favor? That's carried. The recommendations contained within Special Committee of the Whole report related to the Finance and Corporate Services section be approved. Mover and a seconder be Councillor Saint-Amand and Councillor Mayotte. All in favor? And that is carried. Notices of motion, there are none. Consideration of bylaws. So bylaws being 2021-33 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2000-02 as amended of the Corporation of the Town of Penetanguishene, and that is the removal of the H symbol from 33 Polish Avenue. 2021-34 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2021-25, being a bylaw to set the rates of taxation for the year 2021. 2021-35 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2015-64, being a bylaw to regulate the Town of Penetanguishene waterworks utilities and to establish fees and charges. 2021-36 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into a model home agreement with Bay Moorings Marina Holdings GP Inc., Bay Moorings Marina Holdings Limited Partnership, and 2607-7260 Ontario Inc. And bylaw 2021-37 is an agreement with Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit for COVID-19 immunization clinics, which includes the use of Penetanguishene Memorial Community Center, and that the Council of the Town of Penetanguishene introduce the following bylaws, and that the bylaws be read a first time and deemed to be read a second and a third time and carried. Mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor and a seconded Councilor Mayotte. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Bringing us on to question period from the media and the public. And I'm not aware that we have any, unless someone from Rogers has any questions.
Your Worship, we do have a couple members of the public. I just want to pause for a moment just to make sure, because there were a couple members of the public that asked to be added to the meeting. So I just want to give a little bit of an opportunity. Oh, it looks like they're gone now. So yeah. I think we're good to go. Yeah,
I don't see any. That's good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And so that brings us to announcements and inquiries. And I will start off by announcing that tomorrow is a special day for our Mr. CAO. We wish Jeff Lees, our CAO, a very happy birthday. No comment, Jeff?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was hoping that would fly under the radar, but unfortunately it didn't. Another year younger, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, further announcements or inquiries? Councillor Saint-Amand?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to remind the public about the age-friendly survey that is available online right now. It is on our Connect Penetanguishene page. You can also see it, on Facebook as well. So please make sure you get it completed. All that information really helps all of us in the decision-making processes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, our clerk, Madam Clerk, has sent out an email in regards to it and asking members of council to complete the survey. And really, it's a very simple and easy survey to complete. So, Councillor Mayat, I saw your card up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just something I'd like to mention. About a couple of weeks ago, even though with the COVID and all that, people staying at home, it was still nice to see Mike Tinney and his group cleaning the side of our roads, all the way from the hospital all the way to the Angels. They were wearing their masks, were keeping their 6 feet apart, but they were still going out there and cleaning. So big thank to Mike Tinney and his group. I'm not sure which group he was in.
It's Civitan, Mike.
Citizen?
Civitan.
Oh, Civitans. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you to that group. It's really appreciated for what these guys are doing the side of our road. Thank you.
Yeah, they do an excellent job. The Civitans have been doing it for years, and it's great, as you say, Councilor Mayat, to see them out there again. Councilor Vadeboncoeur, did I see your card up?
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is to our CAO, and it has to do with a letter that the municipality received a while back from the Solicitor General's office asking municipalities to review their police services boards within individual detachments. So we're part of the South Georgian Bay OPP detachment. We have a police services board, and I was just wondering if you could provide us an update on that review. Thank you.
Mr. CAO.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Vadeboncoeur. Thank you for the question, Councillor Vadeboncoeur. Great question. Certainly something that the municipality has been working with our neighboring municipalities on that are part of the Southern Georgian Bay detachment. Certainly Midland, Tiny Tay, as well as the District of Muskoka, given part of Georgian Bay Township is serviced by our Southern Georgian Bay detachment. We've also engaged our local interim detachment commander. One of the things that the ministry was very clear on when they did their virtual information sessions, both on April 20th as well as May the 4th, was that their June 7th deadline, if you wish to call it, was really in quotations with an asterisk, which was really a target, quite candidly. And certainly the chair of our police service board, Councillor Cummings, as well as Mayor LaRue, who the letter was addressed to, was on both of those sessions. And one of the things that became very apparent as the administration at the 5 municipalities were discussing this was that we were going to need more time than the June 7th target. We have asked, and the ministry has more than complied for a little bit of flexibility through to the end of July. We will have a jointly authored report coming to our council on July the 14th. Our friends in Midland have graciously agreed to take the lead on a report, and each municipality has a slightly different process in terms of getting council support for it, and hence why we did require time through to the end of July. So certainly the ministry was very appreciative of that, and wanted to ensure we communicated with them accordingly. So hopefully that answers Councillor Vadeboncoeur your question, and certainly council will look forward to a jointly authored report coming on July 14th.
Thank you. It does. Much appreciated.
Okay, further questions or inquiries, announcement? Oh, Councillor Klug.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to mention that it's my favorite month, which is Bike Month. And our staff has put together a really excellent program list for Bike Month. And if you check connectpenetangwisheen.ca, you can register for a whole variety of things, including a bike maintenance webinar that we have Total Sports, the bike shop, helping us with on June 17th. There are many races, distance challenges. There's free bike safety kits that are still available. There's also the decorating all things wheels bike decorating contest, thanks to the Penetangwisheen Centennial Museum. and lots of prizes. So just want to encourage everyone to check connectpenetanguishene.ca for that and get registered.
Yes, very good, Councillor Clue, and the decorating of the bicycles with the children, that was something great to see. Further announcements or inquiries? There being none, the confirmation by law that the confirmation bylaw 2021-38 be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Mover and the seconder, Councillor Mayat, Councillor Levy, all in favor. And motion to adjourn, Councillor Cummings, all in favor. Very good. So with that, let's see with that. My wife's going to say it. You keep saying it. Council, we will take a 5-minute break before we carry on with our committee of the whole.
Councillor Clue, I just thought I'd fill this awkward silence for a moment. I know we're still live on Rogers, but very exciting about the bike programming that we're seeing. As you know, we have a tandem bike that I feel like we just need to put a bow on it and it will win a prize, because tandem bikes are, every time we go for a ride, at least 5 people are just, you know, it gets comments every single time we go for a ride. So it's pretty hilarious how excited people are to see a tandem bike. And we're definitely getting a lot of use of it.
It's rare. I mean, my brother used to ride a unicycle around town and he used to get lots of glares out the window. But anytime you see a rare bike, everyone just,
yeah, it's wild. It's wild. And most of the thing is that Sam gets frustrated because everyone makes the joke like, the guy in the back's not pedaling. You know, it's cute, but yeah, it made me think, we could decorate a tandem bike, and we've got some unique distinction with that.
No, I've never been on a tandem bike. Is there more resistance at the front? Like, do you feel you have to put more effort if you ride in the front?
No, it's all on the same chain system. So you have to pedal, it's all in sequence. So if you just do nothing, the person at the back can drive the bike, or the person, whoever puts in the most effort. And Scott will do that sometimes. He'll take his feet right off the pedals and lift his feet up and say, okay, Sam, you know, give it.
The only benefit to be at the front is to steer then.
Yes.
I'm gonna work.
Yeah, yeah. And so the back where Sam hangs on is just bars. So
Okay.
he's not impacting the steering in any way.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's really cool though. It's a cool little bike.
It looks like fun. Yeah, you should decorate it up for the you wouldn't have to, like you said, you wouldn't have to tie a little balloon to it or something. You wouldn't have to do.
I'll get Sam. I should get Sam to do it. He might enjoy that. Be pretty fun.
Whatever the cool thing is now. It's probably, he's not Minecraft anymore. It'll be whatever
He's back into Minecraft again. Yeah, it comes and goes. I don't know. I can't keep track.
fluorescent green paint on your bike.
I can't. You know what? He's 13 now though, so I can't see him being interested in decorating with Minecraft. He'd think I'm being very. We're not cool anymore, and so.
It's great to see so many bikes in town.
It is. But
oh my God! Every day you see tons of them going by. Great.
Yeah.
I've never seen this many bikes, and I've been a lifelong cyclist, and this is unreal, and I'm thrilled. Wow.
Yeah.
I know. I think they love going down the main street. The whole group of them, and they were just flying.
Oh, the road bikes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we turned around and we saw them on the park trail, Trans-Canada. So I guess they were going out to hook up with the tiny trail.
Well, over here, Overhead Bridge Road, they come up past our house, which is
they won't go on the trail.
Not too many road bikes will, but they hoof it up that long stretch into Tiny, and I just cheer them on. You got this, because it's a long incline.
Yeah, you don't even realize it.
It's been so hot, and people are still out just sweating. But
yeah, it's wild.
You
good
bike
for everyone out there.
Jill, do you bike?
Not much.
I sold my bike.
Yeah.
Took about an hour, and it was going.
Oh yeah, they're hot.
Yeah,
they're a hot commodity.
Oh yeah.
Last year I fell, and yeah, I was a little nervous. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
You need a tandem, Anita.
Yeah, I want one of those 3-wheelers.
Oh, that would be better actually.
Yeah, that's what Kath wants. She wants a 3-wheeler.
They're great with cargo basket. Yeah, perfect.
With a motor on it.
A souped up one.
I've got a few friends who have the 3-wheelers with the nice little basket, and they
so cute.
Come down the main street and then they push it up the main street. Yeah, they're my age. What can I say?
No, anybody's age. I think riding a bike up that main street is a challenge.
Not enough walking, let alone biking.
Exactly.
I see you're doing a lot of walking, Anita.
Well, yes, we are. I haven't this week, but we do get out and walk. We've done the trail. We walk Midland. We walk our main street. Yeah. We're out quite a bit.
Good for you.
Well, it's something to do too. It's pastime.
Yeah.
Let's hope you're all walking into some of our small shops starting on Friday.
You know better than to ask me that question, Deb.
I know.
Okay, members of council, I think we're all back. Councillor LaRose, Councillor Mayat, are you back? Councillor Mayat, Councillor LaRose. Councillor Cummings, are you with us? Councillor Cummings? I don't see Councillor Cummings back, but I think we might move on. Oh, there he is. Okay, we're all set. So we move on to our Committee of the Whole electronic meeting on Wednesday, June the 9th, the 21. And I'll call the meeting to order. And first off is the approval of the agenda. So I need a mover and a seconder for the approval recommended action that the committee of the whole agenda of June 9th, 21 be approved as presented. So mover, Councillor LaRose, Councillor Cummings, second. All in favor? Okay, we are moved on. The declaration of pecuniary interest, if anyone so has, so declare. If not, at the appropriate time. The presentations and delegations of all sections, we have none. 5, the council information package. Recommended action that the council information package, having been given due consideration, be received for information. The council information package of 21 of May 21 and the package of June 9th, 21. Mover and seconder. Councillor Mayotte and Councillor Vademonker. Does anyone have anything that they wish to pull? There's nothing, so then all in favor? Well, that is carried, thank you. And now we move on to Section 8, Transportation Environmental Services. And I pass it on to the Chair of Transportation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tonight on the agenda, Section A, Consent Agenda, we have no items. Section B, Matters for Consideration, we have 2. The first is Disposal of Surplus Assets. Report RDS 2021-14. The recommended action is that Council approve the disposal of all surplus items as outlined within the staff report. Council may recall this is an annual process that we engage, and the items are listed in the report. Do we have a mover for this? Councillor Mayotte? Councillor LaRose? Seconder, Councillor LaRose? Mover, Councillor Mayotte. Are there any questions? Seeing none. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. The second item tonight is the Separate Accessible Transit Service, Report RDS 2021-15. The recommended action is that Council direct staff to bring forward the implementation of a shared separate accessible transit system for consideration during the 2022 budget process. This was based on a council direction from our referrals list. So our staff have consulted with the town of Midland staff. And as you will see, there is action to move this forward to budget consideration. Do we have a mover for this item? Councillor Cummings, a seconder, Deputy Mayor. Any questions? Councillor Cummings, go ahead.
Thank you. Can't find the right mouse here. I just want a comment, not a question. This is really good timing. I think this is a great opportunity for accessible transit to take hold, and I'm really in support of this. As you're aware, I was the one that put it on the referrals list, and it's nice to see that there is a need, and I think we'll be really surprised at how many people actually use it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you so much. And we're moving on to referrals already. So we have the following items. That the motion is that the Transportation Environmental Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. We have Church Street parking and accessible transit options. I suppose we could remove that. It is going to the budget process, so it could be removed if we have a mover to do so. Do we have Councillor LaRose to remove that? Seconder, Deputy Mayor? Any discussion, any further thoughts about this? Deputy Mayor? Oh, you're on mute, Deputy Mayor.
I wanted to speak to the one about the parking on Church Street.
Go ahead. Yep.
I noticed that there was some work being done today. So I would assume that we stayed or potential to stay within our budget of 25,000. Perhaps Brian could answer that.
I think Brian's here tonight. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to the Deputy Mayor. Yes, we have done our evaluation of the parking aisle on Church Street. We've done all the daylighting of the utilities that could be potentially in conflict, and I'm pleased to say that we're able to proceed with the project within the allotted budget.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mayor LaRue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess through to Brian, and the fact is that I noticed, yes, there was considerable work being done on that parking strip this afternoon. So I'm just wondering if it could also be removed from the referrals.
I'm seeing nodding of heads. So do we have a mover to do that as well? Councillor Cummings, seconded by Councillor Rose. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of those changes? Okay, that is carried. Madam Clerk, if I've missed anything, please let me know. If not, I'll move to the next section, which is question period from media and public. Okay, and I'm back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with that, we will move on to Section B, Recreation Community Services, and I will pass it to Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Your Worship. In Section B, Section 7, on our consent agenda, we have one item. The recommended action is that the following consent agenda items, having been given due consideration, be received for information. That is the Museum and Heritage Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor, seconder, Councillor Sanema. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, I have a vote, please. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Under matters for consideration, we have the two tonight. We have the Waypoint Facility Use Agreement. Councillor may be aware we have a use agreement for the facilities up at Waypoint to use the pool. It expires in September, and we would like to renew that agreement for another 5 years, plus an option of another one from there. So the recommended action here is that the draft agreement between the corporation of the town of Penetanguishene and the Waypoint Center for Mental Health Care be approved as outlined in Attachment 1, and that the CAO and Director of Recreation and Community Services are hereby authorized to make minor alterations to the agreement that does not substantially change its content. And finally, that the clerk bring forward the necessary bylaw for council approval. Do I have a mover? Councillor Levy, seconded Councillor Sanema. Any questions, concerns? Councillor Vaillancourt.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. This is a great partnership that we have with Waypoint. I was happy to see this on the agenda. I did notice that the gymnasium is included in the agreement this time around, which is a great addition. We used to use the gym back in the day when it was part of the old Oak Ridge, and they took some time to sort out their programming needs and whatnot, and now it appears that we might be able to have access to the gym once again. So congratulations to staff and section to negotiate that in. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next one is the Island Princess and the Southern Georgian Bay Chamber of Commerce Agreement updates. The RCS-2021-13, that this report be received for information, and that bylaw 2021-21 for entering into an agreement with Georgian Shores Boat Tours be hereby repealed. As council aware, we received notice that the Island Princess was not being able to come to Penetang this year, and therefore they were not able to sign any of the agreements. However, I will ask the Director of Recreation to speak on the updates on the agreement for the Chamber of Commerce.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Chamber of Commerce agreement permitted the chamber staff to carry out chamber business while selling boat tour tickets for the Island Princess. In exchange of being able to use some of the space at the Tourism Information Center, they were going to provide tourism information services into the fall, which normally we would not be open for. Now that the boat won't be operating, it doesn't need to be open that late. We don't anticipate that the traffic will be there. But given the closures with COVID and our challenges with hiring seasonal staff this summer, we're late getting the TIC opened. So we, based on the council resolution that had passed with the agreement, we're negotiating changes to the agreement that will allow us to share that staff member to carry out the tourism information services down at the TIC. So we're just fine tuning those details, and as soon as we can get those sorted, then we will open the TIC and have them provide some of those services in exchange for utilization of the TIC.
Thank you. Before I open it up for discussion, do I have a mover for this? Deputy Mayor, and seconded by Councillor Rose. So I'm open it to discussion. Councillor Sanama, you have your hand up? Oh, okay. Deputy Mayor?
Just a comment, very disappointed. Hopefully things will be better for them and for all of us next year. And they may reconsider and come back to Penetanguishene. We were all looking forward to it, I'm sure. So it is a disappointment, but I'm sure it's a disappointment for them as well.
I'm sure it was. Thank you. Are there any other questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next item 3 is the Penetang Secondary School, the community closure, RCS 2021-14. That staff be given delegated authority to utilize portions of the 2021 Canada Day / All Things Canadian operating budget and savings achieved in the Winterama operating budget within approved budget amounts at their discretion to implement the Penetang Secondary School Community Closure Program. And I will have the director speak to this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as brought forward to council, I believe in a previous presentation from the CAO, staff feel that it's important for the community that they have an opportunity to have some sentimental closure with a facility prior to its demolition. So we've outlined in the report some ideas that we've thrown around that we would like to like the ability to implement, such as creating a documentary or a film that we can archive at the museum, the opportunity for members of the public to purchase some of the contents of the facility. I believe there's an opportunity to perhaps capture a piece of the building that we could reutilize in whatever option council decides to move forward with with that property. Whether it be an arena or whatever option that the consultation and council direction leads us to. And lastly, if the COVID restrictions allow, to organize a last community walkthrough of the facility. So the timelines are tight, we recognize that, and we can't do all these things without some resources available to us. So we're recommending to council that some of the money and time that we would have spent to events this year that we couldn't fully run with, that we reallocate it to make those important community services available to our residents with respect to the school. And lastly, we'd like to strike up an opportunity for the community to participate in a steering committee to help guide this process over the next 3 months.
Thank you. I call for mover on this item. Councillor Sanama, second by Councillor Mayette. Any discussion on this issue? Questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Item C on our agenda is referrals. That the Recreation and Community Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to the upcoming agendas and staff. We have one, and that's the outsourcing of the camp. I'll call for a mover. Councillor Rose, seconded. Deputy Mayor, do I have any additions or no one to make any additions? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Finally, questions from the media and the public. Seeing none, back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. And now we will move on to number 8, which is a section C of Planning and Community Development, and I will pass it to Councillor Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you joined the meeting, I asked Councillor Vadavancourt to carry this because I was missing my second screen. So with your permission.
Very good, Councillor Vadavancourt, if you will.
Thank you, Worship, and Councillor Levy. So moving to the Planning and Community Development Services section, we start off with our consent agenda. We have 4 items, and the recommended action that the following consent agenda items having been given due consideration be received for information. Municipal Bylaw Monthly Activity Report, May 2021. Huronia Animal Control Monthly Comparative Report. The memo to council dealing with 59 Main Street status update, and memo to council follow-up letter dealing with 12 Burns Crescent, which is also subject to a report later in the agenda. Any of those items need to be pulled, members of council? Seeing none, may I have a mover? Councillor Rose, and a seconder, Councillor Levy. All those in favor? Any opposed? Oh, sorry, Councillor Cummings has his card up. So we'll go to Councillor Cummings before I call the vote. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Councillor Vadavancourt. Question regarding the bylaw report. In one of the preambles, the CAO was saying that our bylaw is 7 days a week. I'm noticing that 100 hours is spent in the office and only 65 on the road. At this time of year, with COVID, when there's no one really in the office and there's no courts being done, I'm not sure why they're spending their time in the office. So that's one question. The second question is, bylaw has noticed an increase in household waste dumping and illegal signage related to summer industries and posting through the town. My question is, what are we doing about it? Do we wait for a complaint or do we actually go and do it? I recall when you were a CAO, we had signs built up in the back of the town offices all the time that were illegal signs that were picked up by bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. So I see that our Director of Planning has turned her camera on. So this is the consent agenda, and typically if we want to have a conversation about one of the items, we tend to pull it and then we deal with all the others. So maybe we'll do that next time. But for today, Councillor Cummings has posed 2 questions. Director Beattie, are you in a position to answer those?
Thank you, Councillor Vadavancourt. I can do my best to respond to Councillor Cummings' questions. So the staff hours in the office also deal with, the time it's taking to deal with complaints. I think if you look through, we're continuing to get a huge volume of complaints, and processing those and sending them out has to do with the office administration and the time in the office. So I think what we're continuing to do is patrol with a number of hours. But there is a tremendous amount of office work to administer the bylaw department. That's the first part. The second part around illegal signage and household waste, where we can pick it up and get it, we will. But some things, obviously, we need to pull work orders if we see it. Obviously, we can't see everything and everywhere, so we would always hope people would report to us where there are illegal dumpings or otherwise, but we do try and do our best to spot it out in the patrols. We did put out some communications, and it's maybe time we did last year around some illegal dumping that was happening on one of our rural areas, and a bunch of garbage that was found, and we were able to press some charges. So we can up our communications. But I do know in talking to the bylaw department that the summertime is bringing on a lot of those types of concerns about just maintaining your property.
Thank you. Any further comments on any of the consent agenda items? So we had a mover and a seconder, so I think now we'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Recommendations in the consent agenda. Any opposed? Your Worship, I didn't see your hand go up, so.
I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay. So the motion carries. Okay. So moving on then to B, matters for consideration. We have two matters for consideration. The first item is increasing the building permit fees. Midland Penetanguishene Planning Department Report 2021-22. The recommended action that the proposed building permit fee changes be approved in principle as described in staff report PD 2021-22, and that notice be given of a public meeting regarding the intention to amend the building permit fees in accordance with the Building Code Act. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Levy, the seconder. Councillor Mayotte. So it's on the table. Any questions or comments? Councillor Sanama.
Thank you very much. I just have a question to our director. Like it is a substantial increase, a 15% increase in the building permit fees, and I was just wondering from a timing perspective, like when notices are going to be given, and what the thought was is for when these were going to be implemented.
Director Betty, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vadaboncourt, through you to Councillor Sanama. So if you'll note that this is actually requiring a public meeting under the Building Code Act. So we would have a public meeting. I think I have that tentatively scheduled for either August or September this fall, because we do have to give notice and give the public an opportunity to take a look at this and then come back to council for a final decision and passing of a bylaw. So I think all around, this probably won't be something that we will make effective until potentially January 1st. I want to give myself enough sort of buffer time. I mean, I think the quickest we could do it would be October, November, but I think starting fresh in 2022 might be the best course.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Sanama?
Well, I was just the amount of the increase. I'm just curious as to when, I know there was information in the report that I believe it's been a while since we've had an increase, but 15% is a large amount. So I was just curious as from the calculation and for the costing and everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I saw Councillor Levy's card go up and then Councillor Rose. Councillor Levy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vadaboncourt. I just wanted to point out, I discussed this at great length at section, and my first question always is, how do we align with Midland? Because there used to be, going back many years, a great discrepancy between the various local municipalities. And we worked very hard in the last number of years to align our fees. And the director assured me, which is very important to me, and I would hope the rest of council, that when we do adopt this, we will be fully aligned again with Midland. They got out ahead of us on this. We're catching up to them, but I think for the builders and developers and municipality, it's a really good idea to be very closely aligned with our, you could call them our competitor, you could call them our neighbor, but I was pleased to hear this, so I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Councillor Levy. Councillor Rose, you had a comment or a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if any effort was given to trying to align with the Township of Tiny and the Township of Tay as well. We do so many things as four municipalities, and I just wanted to make sure that if this was one of those things that we could be doing and is aligning all of them together, I think it would be a good idea. I just wanted to know if any effort had been made to do that.
Director Betty.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vadaboncourt, through you to Councillor Rose. So the chief building officials do talk amongst themselves as well as the planning departments, and so we recognize, it's in everyone's best interest to align and try and be as consistent across the region. Building permit fees are slightly different in how they're treated, I guess I would say. Tiny and Tay obviously have a skew towards residential type of growth or agricultural type of growth, whereas Midland and Penetanguishene may be more commercial industrial. And then sort of the cost of doing some of that, providing that surface changes with the more rural municipalities. I think, you know, one of the things we've talked about is, you know, the time it takes to drive from one side of Tiny Township to the other means that a building inspector can only do 2 inspections versus, you know, the 6 or something that they could do just driving across town in Penetanguishene. So for various reasons, I think the other municipalities prefer to set their own rates. What I can tell you is that, you know, we continue to talk to them, and I know we're having those conversations about cloud permit and a better online digital permit tool, and that they're very encouraging. And I think once we get some of those consistent tools out there, we could see ourselves aligning a lot more around fee costs.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I have one, and you may recall at the end of May, we received our 2019 financial report, and I made a comment with respect to how we were depleting our building department reserves to support the building department. The building department is a self-sustaining department under the legislation, so it needs enough revenue to be able to operate. And in the report, it outlined what the projection is for 2020 with respect to the draw on the reserve as well. So what that means is that we're going to have a couple of years where we're going to draw down that reserve, and if that trend continues, then that reserve will be in the red. So from a fee standpoint, I recognize it's 15%. However, that will help the building department in terms of meeting its obligations to be a self-sustaining department. So I just wanted to make that comment because I was a little alarmed when I saw that that draw on the reserve when we were presented with the financial statements. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we already had a mover and a seconder, so all those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. So the next report is a referral report, and that pertains to concerns at 12 Burns Crescent. And the recommended action that staff report PL 2021-24 be received for information. May I have a mover and a seconder for this report before we open it up for discussion? Councillor Rose, Councillor Mayotte. Oh, and I just before we open it up, I just want to point out that the clerk did circulate, I believe she circulated another letter or an email from the owner of 12 Burns Crescent. He had read the report that's on today's agenda and had sent that supplementary letter in. So hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to read it. So any questions or comments on this one? Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, the new letter that has been submitted, are we going to have staff address that report as well, or address that letter? I see it's attached here at the bottom.
The bottom of what, Councillor?
I can clarify. I know Councillor Cummings is on mute. So the one that you're seeing attached to this report specifically is the original response letter to our director's original report. And it was just brought back because, again, this item was referred back to staff. So we're just kind of bringing it back as its whole self, which includes that letter. And then the response to that letter you saw in the consent agenda. The letter that was the second letter that was sent in response was forwarded to council by email, and it can be added as an addendum, but I will let the CAO speak to further responses or the director.
Is the CAO speaking to this matter? Okay, Mr. CAO.
Mr. Chair, I think just for a point of clarification, and I stand to be corrected, but I believe the most recent letter that we received is appended to the agenda. Councillor Cummings was referring to it. I believe it's, and I may be wrong, although I believe the response to referral report is the most recent one that was circulated to council. So I think it's on the agenda, but again, perhaps our clerk can clarify if I've misstepped there. He did reference the right staff report number, so I thought that was added, but if it isn't added, we certainly can add it. I see our clerk shaking her head no. So certainly we can add that to the agenda so it is part of the open record. In terms of addressing the most recent letter that we received, certainly, I mean, I'd look for council. I'd look for council direction on that. I don't think there's a lot, you know, I don't think there would be a lot of new information to provide to this particular resident that we haven't already provided in the staff report. I think there are a number of explanations that staff have provided in the staff report that address from a municipal responsibility perspective and trying to stay in our lane in the staff report, but certainly would be happy to get direction from council if there are specifics that council would like us to try or to attempt in addressing. But certainly would be happy to at the very least acknowledge the letter's been received and it's been provided to council if that's not already been done, and attempt to address based on what we provided to council the most recent points raised.
Any comments on that? I know in the letter, I just had a quick look at it. There are a number of issues that are raised again. A lot of questions. I'm not sure, and I look for some guidance here in terms of the best way to proceed. There still seems to be a number of outstanding issues that are raised, and we have a couple of options here. I see that our Director Murray has put his hand up. He may have some comments, but I think committee may need some guidance from staff on this. Director Murray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess if I may, I've had repeated discussions regarding these issues over the course of, since the beginning of the developments with this particular property owner. And I guess what I would suggest to avoid further back and forth between the residents and council, I guess what I would suggest is, in order to come up with a neighborly solution to a lot of these issues that are happening between the two property owners, I guess what I would offer to do is to approach each neighbor individually to come up with some solutions that don't require legal intervention on the part of any of the two property owners, to see if there's a solution that could be amicably addressed between the two property owners with regards to the snow storage and the placement of snow on the property. The report has stated that, you know, we're limited in terms of our ability to enforce placement of snow on private property. That's the majority of the issue at hand. The property owner at 12 Burns has identified a number of other issues related to snow removal, which I've indicated that we're willing to take a look at to see if we can adjust that in our operations. And with regards to the swale between 14 and 16 Burns Crescent, to see if there's anything within the right of way that we can do to address the drainage issue that he's referring to. That would be my suggestion, but I'm open to comments from council.
Any comments from council? And I don't, I'm going to put this out there, but I apologize to his worship right from the beginning. Your worship, is there some benefit of perhaps you being involved in this discussion from a council perspective? Because, you know, from the standpoint in terms of trying to resolve this, I don't know if we're ever going to get to a point where it can be resolved just by what I read. I commend the director in terms of his willingness to sit down with both neighbors, but I think that from a practical standpoint, the whole discussion should come to a conclusion at some point, and I'm just wondering if there's some benefit of you being involved in the discussion.
Well, Councillor Badalker, I'm not really certain that it would solve anything from what I've seen and what I've heard and what I've read. And I followed this very closely right through the whole process. And I know, and I commend staff, the job that they have done and the way that they have handled all of this and being able to try and determine a solution to the whole matter. I see it and I follow it, and I think that you know, you're into actually, to me, and what is a neighbor's dispute. And you know, it's like the old adage, and I know what other people have been through it. When two neighbors don't see eye to eye and don't get along, it becomes a neighbor's dispute, and I don't see how and where the municipality gets involved and has to try and resolve the problem when it becomes a legal issue. And I think, you know, for me, I think that one or the other or both should be getting advice from lawyers, as opposed to pushing the municipality on this issue.
Councillor Clue.
You, Mr. Chair. I think staff has done a lot of work on this, and I'm really pleased to see in the memo that we had earlier in the consent agenda as well, there's quite a bit of detail. When I read the residents' letter, I see a lot of requests to change bylaws, and there isn't a lot of clarity, I think, for council or staff about what bylaws need changing. And I think council is open to the exploration of what bylaws could be looked at and revised. The only thing I can think of is perhaps we find out when our animal control bylaw is scheduled to have a review. I believe it's a 2011 bylaw, so I'm not sure if our director of planning knows when that might come up for review, and if not soon, perhaps it's something we can add to the referrals list.
Director Betty.
I don't have a specific date. Sorry, through you to Councillor Clue. I don't have a specific date about the review of the animal control bylaw. I do know we've just renewed that contract, and I do recognize that our previous staff report did try to sort of get at some of the bylaw changes requested, and maybe it wasn't clear. I think what I heard was specifically around the animal control, and then potential changes to the zoning bylaw for buffering or have landscaping. I think those were sort of the bylaw changes I was able to decipher from the resident and what they were looking for. So, I mean, I think I'd be happy if you want to add it as a referral, but I think some clarity around what exactly the bylaw issue is and the bylaw to be revisited would be helpful.
Thank you. So our director has put forward a recommendation with respect to meeting with the neighbors on an individual basis to see if some resolution to the situation can be arrived at. Is that something that council is supportive of in terms of direction through the CAO to our director? Looking for some nods here. So, Madam Clerk, would we need to amend the motion? The motion has the report being received for information. Is there something we should be doing to provide direction in that regard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that that answer lies in the expectations of committee. So if the CAO understands the request, the director understands the request, and they're able to proceed and continue versus committee wanting this to again come back and the conversation to continue. That's where I would say that staff would be looking for a specific motion in terms of proceeding. But the CAO might be comfortable with direction, or he might request the motion.
Mr. CAO.
Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the comments from council with respect to the amount of staff time that's been utilized on this particular matter. I was going to suggest that we do in fact meet with both residents, perhaps individually, as well as follow up in our meeting with the particular resident at 12 Burns. Just to touch on some of those things that I think I heard Councillor Klug mention around the bylaws in an attempt to try to get some clarity. Happy to respond from a staff perspective to the latest letter to the particular resident, and just respond with a letter from staff to the resident, and then circle back with council and just provide an update on that progress. In response to the question from you, Mr. Chair, I'm comfortable unless I'm off base and misinterpreted what council would like to see. I'm comfortable with proceeding in that fashion, and certainly cognizant that there are a number of nuances with this particular situation, and certainly want to try to reach an amicable agreement as best as possible with the two residents, recognizing that I think there's a number of interesting, unique situations that have been raised. But certainly happy to proceed in that manner if that's something council would like to see, or perhaps council would like to see something different.
Well, my sense was that just from the nods around the screen was that people were supportive of the director's suggestion. So from that standpoint, it was just a question whether that needed to be included in the motion or not. But if the direction is clear in terms of how we are going to proceed, then from my standpoint, I'm comfortable calling the vote on the motion as I read. It is listed on the referral list. So when we get to that point, I would say that it would stay on the referral list, because the matter is still being reviewed by staff, and there will be something subsequent coming back. So I would be prepared to put that to council, and we'll move forward. So unless there's anybody that's has any further comments, I'll call the question then as the recommendation as written in the agenda. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried, and that includes the direction provided to Director Murray. Thank you. And moving on to the referrals, we've got 3 referral items. The Burns Crescent bylaw concerns, and so as I suggested, I think that one should stay on because there's still further work to be done on that one. The 59 Main Street update, that was provided to council earlier on our agenda, and the Huronia Animal Control Communications, that's slated for Q3 of later this year. So is there anything to add to the referral list? Anything to take off the referral list? Councillor Rose.
We take off 59 Main Street.
Okay, and that was Councillor Mayotte. Did you get your response? Okay, I just saw his yes card, so that's affirmative. Councillor Rose, we can take that one off. Any other adjustments? Okay, I'll read the motion then, that Planning and Community Development Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff as amended. Any further discussion? May I have a mover? Councillor LaRose, Deputy Mayor Dubo. All those in favor? Motion carries. Next item is question period from the media and the public. Don't see any. I'm going to put it back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Wedemalker. And then we will now move on to 9, Section B, Finance and Corporate Services, and I will pass it to Councillor Santamo.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Under Finance and Corporate Services, we have one item on the consent agenda. It's a memo to council regarding the closing date of 51 Dunlop Street, the 51 Dunlop Street property purchase, CAO report 2021-09. If I could have a mover for that, please. Councillor Mayotte and a seconder. Councillor LaRose, any discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote, please. All those in favor? Duly passed. Thank you. Under matters for consideration, we have 2 matters for consideration. The first one is the 2022 OPP contract and billing model, Finance 2021-16. That BIN 2021-16, 2022 OPP contract and billing model report be received for information, and that the change to the standard OPP billing model is approved. And finally, that the staff be directed to advise the OPP in writing of council's decision. If I could have a mover for that, please. Councillor Mayotte, and a seconder, Councillor Cummings. Everyone's had a chance to read the report. Any questions? Need anything verified? Good. Oh, Councillor LaRose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wonder where we're at with the contract for the correctional center.
I will ask either our CAO or our treasurer to speak with that. We did discuss it at the committee level meeting, but Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just through to Councillor LaRose's question. We reported to council, I believe, at our May 12th meeting with a copy of a letter that was sent from His Worship to the Minister of Solicitor General as well as our MPP on this particular matter, requesting a meeting. We have not received a response to date. There is a draft that will be going out very shortly. There's a letter that will be going out very shortly that's currently in draft format or form as a follow-up to our MPP, requesting a meeting and requesting that our MPP get involved and get engaged in this effort with the Minister of Solicitor General, given that we have not had much success with the letter to date. In addition, and His Worship is happy to chime in if he'd like, but we have had conversation about His Worship reaching out in follow-up to that letter that will go out very shortly, reaching out to our MPP to have a phone conversation about our request to have her get engaged and help us collaborate with the minister on this particular issue. The other piece I can add for council is that there is some progress being made with a number of municipalities that are serviced or that house similar type facilities in the province in an effort to hopefully have an opportunity or devise a strategy whereby our mayors of the various municipalities across the province will collectively band together and lobby the province in that regard. The idea being that hopefully there may be an opportunity at the upcoming AMO conference to do so. So hopefully that gives council a little bit of an update in addition to the last update that was provided.
I just wonder if it wouldn't be prudent on our part as to not pass this new OPP billing model. I for one, am totally against this. This is going to cost our municipality somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 a year. So why would we be in any hurry to pass a new model? I think we need to bring pressure to the situation politically, and would be absolutely a no for us agreeing to any change at this time at all until these issues are resolved.
CEO, would you like to, Mr. CEO, would you like to respond to that?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to Councillor LaRose, and perhaps we didn't, we weren't as clear as we could have been in the report. But by moving to this new model, we actually expect that there may be some savings. You know, we've had some preliminary estimates from the ministry. We don't expect the savings to be material, to be very candid. It's difficult to estimate what those savings are, and certainly I saw our treasurer pop up, and I'll maybe give her an opportunity to speak to specifics. But this is something that the province is going to force us to go to within the next year when they pass the new Community Safety Policing Act. But you know, in addition to that, I would say that by staying on the FTE model for the billing at CNCC, we do anticipate that the costs, it may actually cost us slightly more than by moving to the standard OPP billing model, where they put the calls for service in the 4-year rolling average. It's difficult to quantify with a great deal of certainty, but certainly some of the data they've provided us with historical years suggest that we should see a little bit of a savings. And so for that reason, we felt that this was really the right thing to do, as opposed to waiting a year when they're when the ministry forces us to do so. Madam Chair, I don't know if through you, with your indulgence, if the treasurer can add comment.
Yes, for sure.
Good evening. I don't really have a lot more to add than what the CAO has mentioned. It is difficult to quantify because of the complexity of the calculation, and the 4-year rolling average has to be recalculated. We do anticipate, we've been advised by the OPP financial staffing that they've ran some scenarios, and there's not a huge change, but the change that we may see in the future is a reduction to our OPP billing estimate. The only point in relation to the Ministry of Solicitor General and the CNCC cost recovery issue is they are two very distinct and separate issues in terms of our OPP billing model, and the fact that you know, the minister has decided against the cost recovery for municipalities that have these types of institutions. The other thing that I wanted to mention is coming down the pipe, there's some new policing act or something. I don't recall its exact name, and in effect, come 2022, we won't have a choice in terms of what billing model to go with. They will be mandating the standard billing model for everybody. So we just decided that because the outlook on accepting that standard billing model would save us a little bit of money, whatever that may be, we'll find out in September when our billing estimate comes in, that it may offset any type of reduction to our cost recovery that we may be looking at in the future to offset. But again, they are two very distinct and separate issues.
Your Worship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Councillor Rose, that they are two distinct issues, and in the letter, Councillor Rose, that was forwarded to the Solicitor General under my signature, was a request to meet and to discuss the issue of CNCC, and it's nothing to do with the billing method at all. It is to do with the reason why are we having to start paying for policing costs at CNCC when we were told so many years ago that the cost was going to be burdened by the province. And from our understanding, it was to be forever, not to change, and halfway through the pipe. And very disappointed in the fact that the letter was sent to Solicitor General of the CC to our MPP, and that we've had absolutely no response to either one. So it is my intention to forward another letter, and particularly highlighting our own MPP, that we are requesting to meet with Solicitor General, and the meeting that we want with the Solicitor General is not so much to discuss the billing model, it is to discuss why we have to start paying for policing at CNCC in 2022. And from there, I can say that there has to be a meeting, there has to be a response, there has to be something said and done, because for me, and I'm sure all members of council, it may become a political issue.
Councillor Rose.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I don't believe that at all. I believe the two are interlinked. I think this is a way of their going around saying, oh, we're just moving the entire province in this way. And that way, any community that has an institution like ours is just going to get snafu'd by this. Why would we be interested in changing our billing model when, in my estimation, our billing model says now that they pay for calls for service to that facility? Why would we even think about that until they bring forth something? And as you just said, Mr. Mayor, they have just shut us right out and said nothing. So why would we have any interest in believing anything that they're saying right now?
Well, I know that CAO has been in correspondence and meetings with the Solage, so maybe he can respond to your question.
Go ahead, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I would say is I can appreciate Councillor LaRose's comments. Again, I just would reiterate that the province has given us notice that at the end of 2021, they will not be post December 31st, 2021, they won't be reimbursing the municipality for any CNCC policing costs, whether we stay on the existing model, FTE model, or whether we move to the standard billing model. If we stay on the same model we are today, as I've tried to articulate, our costs, I do expect that, and I'm going to toss out some numbers, but they're hypothetical numbers, that if today our costs at CNCC under the existing model are $100,000, then under the standard billing model that we eventually have to move to, we expect that those costs would be slightly less than that. So we would still bear the cost of CNCC policing unless we're able to convince the ministry otherwise, which, you know, rest assured we're gonna bring our A game. But if we aren't able to convince the ministry, you know, and certainly you know, that we do expect that the cost would be slightly less than what it would be under the existing model. So, I mean, I'm happy to take council's direction. Part of the recommendation here was the ministry's already made their mind up. They've already made their decision. They've given us notice. Certainly there are other avenues that I would suggest are open and available to council, which I would suggest are for a future conversation that the municipality could consider. But the recommendation here was really in an attempt to cut our losses or mitigate the expense to the municipality as a result of the notice the ministry has given us. Again, I can appreciate Councillor LaRose's comments. You know, certainly equally as frustrated with the situation, and certainly will continue through leadership from Mayor LaRue to lobby the province.
Madam Chair, at an absolute minimum, we should be telling the province right up front that this is something that our community cannot afford. If they are going to impose this and put this on us and say, we have to come up with the difference, of which I understand is approximately $400,000 a year from our community, just write them back and tell them, hey, we can't afford it. We're not going to do it. So when you call the OPP, you guys do it. Not interested. We just will not service that building.
Appreciate your comments, Councillor LaRose. And I certainly, our CAO has provided us with the information regarding the billing model, which is the part that we're discussing right now. I believe there's more information that will be forthcoming as far as the lack of payment from the government to cover the costs, and that is something that, you know, obviously we're going to continue to be working on as diligently as possible. But the motion that is before us right now is in regards to the billing model with the OPP. So we have had a mover and a seconder. Was there any further discussion? Okay, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of passing the changing to the new billing model? If I could see.
In favor.
1, 2, 3. Okay, those opposed? 1, 2, 3. Councillor Klug, I didn't see a vote in either direction. No. Okay. Okay. So at this moment in time, that motion is not passed.
Councillor Sainama, I did not, did you vote on it?
I did not vote on it. I guess I get to be the deciding factor.
Pardon me, Madam Chair. Yeah, if you could start that again. I do have Councillor seat. You had originally had a mover and seconder when you brought this item forward. It was Councillor Mayotte and Councillor Cummings. Councillor Mayotte is continuing to have internet challenges at home, so he isn't on the meeting, which is why you don't see him voting. But at the moment, I think that you were trying to get the motion going. Councillor Mayotte was calling me and I was trying to pay attention, but I think you called for a new mover and seconder.
No,
Okay.
I didn't call for, never called for a new, I knew that we had a mover and a seconder. I just called for, the vote.
Called for the vote, okay.
Yes.
And not exactly sure the fact that Councillor Mayotte's no longer with us and he moved the motion, how that's supposed to work. But that being said, I do believe you're taking the vote, and I think what Mayor LaRue is saying is your vote hasn't been accounted for.
Yes, and I am in favor of the motion. I do believe that because it is two separate entities, and I do believe that we will continue to try and get the cost recovery in another manner. This billing model should be saving us some money as a town.
So can we call for the vote again, just so we can see the reds and the greens together? So that we have.
If you could all put up your signs, please. Yes and no. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, so we do need. We're tied.
No, we're tied, and so in the. I know you guys don't normally do this, so it's fair that you don't know. But when it's a tie, it is defeated. The motion is defeated in a tie. Okay. So we can. We can continue with the motion defeated as it is, or we're looking for someone to move another motion.
Okay, Councillor Badabakar, request to speak. Go ahead.
So just a point of order here with respect to Councillor Mayotte's technical difficulty. Do we know if he's trying to return to the meeting?
He definitely is. Because he's actually come in and out a couple of times this evening. And when I was on the phone with him, he just asked me, he was struggling to get in, and he asked me to resend him the meeting invitation, of which I was just a bit distracted because we were dealing with some motion related things. So I will try to get him back on the call if committee is willing to take a bit of a pause for this to get him here.
Madam Clerk, I think it would be important on this matter, since we do have a 9-member council and he was here for part of the discussion, and due to technical difficulties, he was not able to participate in the vote. I think his vote would be very important in this matter.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vadeboncor. If so, that being said, can we, Councillor Cummings, did you have a request to speak?
I was just going to request, is it possible we can pause on this one, go to number 2 and come back?
That was going to be my recommendation, but thank you. That sounds like if that's okay with council, you're good with making those nodding of heads. Is that okay? Okay, so we'll hold off and do the vote when Councillor Mayotte is available. Okay. So moving on to item number 2, 2022 budget goals, the objectives and guidelines. Finance report 2021-17, that the report in 2021-17, 2022 budget goals, objectives and guidelines report be approved, and the staff be directed to prepare the 2022 draft budget in accordance with the town's budget procedure policy, 2022 budget timeline, and the 2022 goals, objectives, and guidelines within this report. If I could have a mover, please. Councillor Cummings, and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Dubo. This report it's quite in depth. It was interesting to see the survey results. We did discuss at committee the fact that there were the public did participate, and which is always very beneficial. I'm assuming everyone has had the opportunity to read the report. Is there any discussion at this point? Seeing none, if I could have a call for the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passed. Thank you. Oh, and there is our Councillor Mayotte.
Don't know what happened, disconnected, I had a hard time getting on, but looks like I'm back on for now.
Well, that's great. We need you at this moment in time.
Sorry, my apologies, Madam Chair. Trying to get Councillor Mayotte, I missed the mover and seconder for the previous motion for the 2022 budget goals.
Mover was Councillor Cummings and seconded by Deputy Mayor Dubo. And that motion did pass.
Thank you. Yes, I caught that part, and you can get Councillor Mayotte up to speed as to where we're at with the other item.
Okay, so Councillor Mayotte, we did have some discussion in regards to the OPP billing model motion, and we are calling for the vote. There has been some discussion, so we do need to count the vote because it's that close. So that we have a mover and a seconder, which was yourself. Stacy, who was our seconder, please? Sorry. Oh, Councillor Cummings.
Councillor Cummings, Councillor Mayotte moved the motion, and Councillor Cummings seconded the motion. And I might have to remind Councillor Mayotte that moving a motion means you can't vote against it. As a
Who moved it? Who seconded it?
You moved it.
I did?
Well, it's part of our it's the OPP contract and billing model.
Okay.
Okay. So do you want me to reread the motion? Is everybody, no, everyone's comfortable? So if we will call for the vote, all those in favor or opposed, please show your sign, please. So that motion has passed with the addition of Mr. Mayotte. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, referrals to upcoming agenda staff. The referrals that the Finance and Corporate Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. And the future agenda items are the Huronia Airport Commission roadmap update and procedural bylaw review, presentations, and delegations. Do we want anything added or subtracted or any discussion? No, if I could have a mover, please. Deputy Mayor Dubo, seconded by Councillor Mayotte, and Councillor Vadeboncor request to speak. Go ahead, unmute.
Thank you. We just finished a discussion earlier where the CAO outlined some steps with respect to the OPP and the Central North Correctional Facility. I'm just wondering, in the spirit of what the referral list is for, whether that should be something that's put on the list so that we can address it at the appropriate time when it comes back.
That sounds quite logical. Do you need to move that it be added? Or we just do it as amended? And make sure that the staff has the guidance as what they need to keep us informed as to what's going on.
I think I have to move it, so I will do that. And if somebody can second it, then.
Councillor Cummings is seconding it.
Sorry, my apologies. Can I just get clarification to what the item is and the key deliverables, just for the addition of that item?
So I think,
go ahead.
Sorry, I think the item would be described as OPP policing costs for the Central North Correctional Facility.
Yeah, CNC recovery cost, maybe?
Yeah, policing recovery costs for the Central North Correctional Facility. And the key deliverable, I guess, is ministry concurrence that they will continue with the current paying for policing costs associated with the facility.
Okay,
thank you.
I'm not sure what the timeline is. I guess that's up to staff to insert that.
Yes. Certainly based on discussions, I would think it's going to be like Q4 2021, but we'll have to let staff complete that. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Councillor Vadeboncor, are we talking about the billing model? Because the ministry's already said they're not going to do it from this point forward. Like from December 2021 forward, they are not going to pay for it. So what are we talking about? The letter that the mayor sent and the negotiations? Or are we talking about the billing model to be referred?
Mr. CAO, would you like to respond to that question?
Madam Chair, I was hoping that I could get some my question was going to be similar to Councillor Cummings, looking for some clarity. I cut out, or Councillor Vadeboncor cut out for me. So all I heard was something about getting the policing costs covered. So I just want some clarity on what the referral item is.
I just felt that it was an important item that we had talked about, that there's ongoing efforts to convince the ministry that they should be continuing to pay for policing costs related to the facility. So rather than that just go away, I thought that there might be might be important to add it to the referral list as something that we want to continue to pursue. This is outside the billing model. This would be something based on the conversations that you and his worship have been having with ministry staff to convince them to continue with the arrangement that has existed since the facility was brought on board. And hopefully you'll be successful in your discussions. And I thought maybe as a referral item that would be there and we would get an update from time to time on how it's going.
Go ahead, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That certainly, that's very clear for me. Thank you. That you cut out. Certainly, I think it's a great idea. Certainly happy to keep council in the loop as we've been doing in terms of proceeding with the direction that council has given Mayor LaRue and the support that's been given to Mayor LaRue. So certainly happy to continue providing those updates to council as we've done, so that council continues to be kept in the loop. And certainly appreciate that clarity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now no, I don't think we didn't do a motion yet for the referrals, correct?
So I have that Councillor Vatiboncourt moved at the addition of this item, and I don't have a seconder for that as yet.
Oh, I thought Councillor Cummings seconded that.
I very well could have missed it. It's been...
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's
Thank
okay.
you.
But we haven't done the full referral mover. Oh, we'll call for a vote or call for it as amended.
As amended is fine, if you'd like.
As amended? Okay. So we have a mover and a seconder. And for that the referral items as amended. And if we could have a vote for that, please. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you very much. Question period from the media and public. Seeing none, I think we're good. Thank you very much, and I shall give it back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Sanama. And that concludes our committee of the whole meeting. And so we are adjourned.